talk about mind your business, to be quiet, and to be faithful living. This been on my heart sometimes because it seems like a lot of people like to talk about everybody else except Jesus. You know, they want to talk about your business, they want to talk about your business, they want to talk about your business, but they don't ever want to talk about Jesus. You know, if you're going to come and gossip to me, bring the gospel, not gossip. You know, so that's what we're going to talk about. Mind your business. You know, God called you to be quiet and have a faithful living. I know as most of my sisters in here, we are very humble. We are loud, boisterous. We're quiet people. We stick to ourselves. You know, but if we want to talk about Jesus, then we'll be happy to talk about Jesus. But we're not going to be gospeling. We're going to talk about the gospel. So tonight we're going to get into our word. It's going to be coming from several scriptures. But, and you know, you heard back in the days, we all heard this saying. When your grandparents, your teacher, even you play sports, they always tell you, mind your business. You know. Now, when we were kids, the phrase meant one thing. They said, stay out of grown folks' business. Y'all ever heard that? You used to be a kid, and then you be hanging around grown folks, and your mom said, y'all go outside, grown folks talking. You remember that? See, they were trying to tell you, mind your business. This had nothing to do with you. You on this level, this is a whole other level with this conversation. So that's what we're going to be talking about. You ever seen somebody who's so focused on everybody else, like they don't know what's going on in their own life? They can tell you who's arguing, who's dating who left the church, who's mad at who, but they can't tell you when last time they prayed. They can't tell you when last time they read the Bible. They can't even tell you who's calling them, what's their calling in life. Because everybody got a calling in their life. You know that, right? Your call might be different from yours. Miss Queen's call might be different from Johnson. Everybody got a calling on their life. Some are teachers, preachers. Some are just encouragers. Some are helpers. Everybody got a gift, but we all got a call to do something in life. You know? And it's like, if I'm doing something and it's not bothering you, what are you going to talk about me for? I'm trying to do the work of the Lord. But yet and still, you want to go around and, you know, and say this and this and this and that. But you never want to say, Jesus love you. I'm praying for you. So let's be mindful of that. Some people are so busy watching others, they're beginning to watch themselves. The truth is, we don't call that busybody anymore. What we call it today is like, I'm just checking in on you. Or we say something like, I'm just trying to help. Or just concerned. And the other night was saying, I'm just keeping it real. You know, everybody, I'm just keeping it real. You're not keeping it real telling my business. You know, you just keep that to yourself. What I tell you in private is for you. You know, I'm just keeping it real, man. I'm just letting you know how everybody else feeling. Nah, that's a busybody. But the Bible calls it something else entirely. 1 Peter 4:15. If anybody taking the notes, anybody remember where this is coming from, but remember this verse. 1 Peter 4:15. It says, let none of you suffer as a murderer, as a thief, as an evildoer, or as a busybody in other men's matters. Hear that? He compared a busybody to a murderer, a thief, and an evildoer. That's serious. That is some serious heavy hitters right now. I heard it saying before, but busybody is at one of the top of the list of what God do not like. God puts the busybody in the same category as somebody who destroys lives, because busybodies, that's what they do. They destroy lives. Not with weapons, but with words.